The restaurant seemed to have lost its soul, and he needed to discover the reason before everything fell apart. Disguised as a customer, he dove into the heart of the problem and met someone who brightened even the greyest days. "You look different," she said, not knowing how right she was. But when the truth came out, the pain of deception was greater than any good intention. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Now on with the story. Michael Taylor never imagined he would reach the point of no longer recognizing his own empire. Sitting in the boardroom of the central office on Park Avenue, he stared at the reports scattered across the mahogany table as if they were silent accusations. Plummeting numbers, growing complaints, employees resigning, customers flocking to the competition. The restaurant chain his father had built over 30 years, which he had inherited with such pride 5 years ago, was slowly crumbling, and he couldn't understand exactly why. He was 32, had an MBA in business administration, expensive consultants, and strategic meetings every week, but none of it seemed enough to stop the bleeding. The numbers said one thing, but Michael felt something deeper was happening, something the spreadsheets couldn't capture. It was as if the heart of the restaurants had stopped beating, and no one could explain why. That Thursday afternoon, after another frustrating meeting with directors who repeated the same empty analyses, Michael made a decision that would have made his father roll his eyes in his grave. He called Frank, his trusted assistant, and closed the door to his office. Frank was in his early 40s, discreet and loyal, one of the few people Michael truly trusted. "I want to do something that's going to sound crazy, Frank. I need you to hear me out before you say anything." Frank adjusted his glasses and crossed his arms, already prepared to hear another of his boss's unusual ideas. Michael had a reputation for being creative, sometimes impulsive, but he rarely made a mistake when he trusted his intuition. "I'm going to go undercover. I'll go in as a customer at one of our restaurants, the one in Greenwich Village, the one that's lost the most business in recent months. I want to see with my own eyes what's happening, and then I need you to hire me as an employee, a waiter, a kitchen helper, whatever. I want to work there from the inside without anyone knowing who I am." Frank was silent for a few seconds, processing the information. Then he sighed and shook his head, half in disbelief, half in admiration. "Are you sure about this? If anyone finds out, it'll be a scandal, and if the other partners find out, they'll question your sanity." Michael offered a tired but determined half-smile. "That's why no one can know, only you. I'll use a different name, different clothes. I'll act like someone who needs that job. I need to feel what the employees feel, understand what the customers see. The reports are lying, Frank, or at least they're not telling the whole story." The next day, Michael woke up early and went to a popular discount store in Queens. He bought simple jeans, plain t-shirts, a pair of deliberately worn-out sneakers, and even got a different haircut at a neighborhood barbershop. He took off his Swiss watch, put away his corporate phone, and picked up a basic prepaid one. Looking at himself in the mirror, he almost didn't recognize himself. The businessman in a suit and tie had given way to an ordinary young man, someone who could be any worker in New York City. Late that afternoon, dressed in his new clothes and carrying a shabby backpack he'd bought on purpose, Michael walked into the Village Eatery, located on a busy corner in Greenwich Village. The place could seat 100 people, with rustic wooden tables, walls decorated with Portuguese tiles, and a smell that should have been inviting but now seemed artificial, forced. He sat at a table near the window and observed. The dining room was far, too empty for a peak hour. Only 4 tables were occupied. Waiters leaned against the walls with tired expressions, and the background music was too low to be noticed. The atmosphere was heavy, as if everyone there was serving a sentence rather than working. That's when she appeared. A young woman of about 26 with brown hair tied in a slightly messy ponytail, a somewhat wrinkled uniform, but with a genuine smile on her face. She approached his table with a naturalness that completely contrasted with the apathetic environment around her. "Good afternoon. Welcome to the Village Eatery. First time. Here?" Michael nodded, trying to look like a regular customer. "Yeah, it is. I heard about the place and decided to check it out." She pulled a small notepad from her apron and let out a little laugh. "Well, I'll be honest with you. The menu changed recently, and not everything is quite up to par yet, but I can point you to what's really worth it. The shrimp risotto is good, the steak and fries is a solid choice, and the coffee is as strong as it gets. If you want something lighter, there's a Caesar salad that Sarah makes with a lot of care. Michael was surprised by her frankness. Most servers recited the menu like robots. This young woman seemed genuinely concerned about him making a good choice. "I'll have the risotto then, and an orange juice." "Great choice. Just give me about 20 minutes because the kitchen is a bit slow today, but I guarantee it'll be worth it." As she wrote, Michael noticed her name tag, Laura, a simple, pretty, American name. She turned to head to the kitchen, but then looked back and commented almost casually, "And relax, the atmosphere in here is a bit like a funeral today, but we try to liven things up, you know." He almost laughed. She had noticed. That casual comment confirmed everything he suspected. The problem wasn't just structural, it was human. The place was sick, and the people felt it in their bones. While waiting for his order, Michael observed the interactions. A paunchy, middle-aged manager with slicked-back hair and a permanently irritated expression circled the tables like a taskmaster. His name was Roger, from what Michael could overhear. Roger would stop next to employees and speak in a low voice, but his tone was always harsh, threatening. When Laura passed him carrying a tray, the man grabbed her by the arm and hissed something Michael couldn't hear, but it made the young woman's face fall for a moment. She took a deep breath, nodded, and moved on, recovering her smile before reaching the kitchen. Michael felt a pang of anger. How could a manager treat an employee like that in public without any embarrassment? 20 minutes later, Laura returned with his dish. The risotto was well presented, smelling of garlic and white wine. She placed the plate on the table carefully and commented, "Here you go, hot and fragrant. If you don't like it, let me know and I'll fight the kitchen for you." Michael took the first bite and had to admit, it was excellent. He told her so, and Laura smiled, satisfied. "Sarah is a magician. She cooks with her heart, you know. It's a shame we don't have more business. That woman deserves a packed restaurant every day." "Why do you think business has dropped off?" Michael asked, pretending to be just a curious customer. Laura shrugged, but her gaze grew distant for a moment. "Oh, there's a lot going on around here. Management changes, people leaving, a heavy atmosphere. Sometimes I think it's lacking soul, you know, it's lacking someone who truly cares about the place. But anyway, I won't bore you with our internal problems. Eat up and I'll bring you a coffee later that will bring you back to life." She walked away before he could ask anything else. Michael ate slowly, observing everything. He saw Roger yelling at a young waiter for taking too long to clear a table. He saw a pregnant cook, who must have been Sarah, being reprimanded for something he couldn't identify. He saw Laura, intervening discreetly, calming her colleagues, distributing smiles as if they were medicine against the poison of that environment. When he finished, he asked for the check. Laura brought it, and he paid in cash, leaving a generous tip. She thanked him, surprised, and commented, "Wow, thank you. You didn't have to, but this helps a lot. Come back soon, okay? We need customers who appreciate real food." Michael left with a heavy heart and the certainty that he had made the right decision. That restaurant was dying from the inside, and it wasn't for a lack of talent or dedication. It was for a lack of respect, of leadership, of humanity. And Laura, even in the midst of it all, was the only light he could see. That night, he called Frank and confirmed the plan. "I want to be hired as a waiter. Tomorrow, use a fake name, make up a story. Get me in there." Frank sighed on the other end of the line. "All right, Michael, but if this goes wrong, you'll have to deal with the consequences on your own." The following Monday, Michael woke up at 5 in the morning. He put on black pants, a white shirt and basic black shoes, the uniform Frank had arranged for him. The fake name he would use was Michael Smith, a name so common no one would suspect a thing. His story would be simple. He was unemployed, needed money, and had experience in customer service. He arrived at the restaurant through the back door as Frank had instructed. Roger greeted him with a look of contempt, as if he were doing him a huge favor by hiring him. "You have experience?" "A little," Michael replied, forcing a humble tone. "Then you'll learn fast or you'll be out. I don't have patience for amateurs. Laura will show you the basics. After that, you're on your own." Roger walked away, and Michael took a deep breath. He was in. Now it was time to see, feel, and understand everything from the inside. Laura appeared a few minutes later, tying her apron and adjusting her name tag. When she saw Michael, her eyes widened and she smiled, surprised. "Hey, you're the guy who had the risotto on Friday, right? What a coincidence. Did you get hired?" Michael nodded, trying to look embarrassed. "Yeah, I needed a job when I heard. There was an opening. I came to try my luck." She gave him a friendly pat on the shoulder. "Welcome to the circus, then. Come on, I'll show you where everything is. And relax. The beginning is always a bit chaotic, but you'll get the hang of it." She led him through the corridors, showing him the kitchen, the storeroom, the makeshift locker room, the place where the trays and plates were kept. She explained everything with a patience Michael hadn't expected, making jokes about the temperamental coffee machine and the freezer that sounded like a truck engine. The secret here is not to take anything to heart. Roger barks a lot, but deep down he's just a frustrated guy. We pretend to listen, keep our heads down, and play the game. It's the only way to survive. Michael nodded, but inside he was seething. How could these people stand working under someone so toxic? And why had he, the owner of it all, never noticed? His first shift was a disaster. He carried trays with trembling hands, mixed up orders, and tripped over his own feet. At one point, he almost dropped an entire platter of pasta on the floor. It was Laura who appeared out of nowhere and steadied the tray just in time, laughing at the situation. "Easy there, Tiger. You look like a penguin on ice. Take a deep breath and go slow. No one here is a superhero." She taught him how to balance the weight better, how to use his left hand for support, how to walk looking forward instead of at his feet. Between tips, she disarmed his tension with funny comments, turning every mistake into a reason to laugh instead of feel ashamed. In the middle of the shift, Roger caught Michael, stumbling over a chair, and exploded, "What is this nonsense? Are you a waiter or a comedian? If you can't handle it, get your things and leave." Michael felt his blood boil, but before he could respond, Laura intervened. "Calm down, Roger, he's new. Everyone makes mistakes at the beginning. I'll look after him." Roger huffed, annoyed, but walked away. Michael looked at Laura, grateful but also confused. Why was she defending him? She barely knew him. The answer came during their break, when the two sat in the back of the restaurant on a plastic stool next to an ice bucket. Laura opened a simple packed lunch, rice, beans, and a piece of chicken, and offered him half. "Here, have some. I bet you haven't even had time to eat properly." Michael hesitated, but accepted. They ate in silence for a few minutes, until she started talking, almost as if thinking aloud. "You know, I defend the new people because I know how hard it is at the beginning. When I started here 2 years ago, I was a disaster too. I dropped things, forgot orders, got yelled at every day. But some people were patient with me. They taught me. They encouraged me. Now I do the same. We have to look out for each other because no one else will." Michael remained silent, touched by the simplicity and generosity of this woman. She didn't know he was the owner. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was just being who she was, a good person, trying to survive in a place that didn't deserve her heart. "And have you always wanted to work in a restaurant?" Michael asked, genuinely curious. Laura shrugged, a sad smile on her face. "Actually, I've always wanted to have my own restaurant. Small, simple, with home-style cooking, you know? A place where people feel at home, but that's just a dream. For now I need to work here and help my mom. She's going through some health problems, and the treatment is expensive. One day, maybe, I'll save up enough money to make my dream come true." She spoke with a mixture of hope and resignation that broke Michael's heart. Here was a woman with talent, vision, and kindness, trapped in a job that suffocated her, working for a boss who humiliated her, fighting alone to take care of the person she loved. The following days were intense. Michael got the hang of the job, learning to carry trays, memorize orders, and deal with customers. Laura was always nearby, correcting, teaching, making jokes. He began to realize that she was the heart of that place. It was she who calmed down angry customers, who comforted humiliated colleagues, who brought a lightness to an environment that should have been welcoming but had become a prison. At night, When everyone else had gone home, Michael would be left alone in the empty dining room, looking at the vacant tables and feeling the weight of his responsibility. This place was his. These people worked for him. And he had let it all fall apart without noticing. He had been so absent, so focused on numbers and strategies, that he had forgotten the basics, that a restaurant isn't made of food, it's made of people. And at the center of it all, shining even amidst the chaos, was Laura, a woman he barely knew, but who had already stirred something inside him, something he didn't even know existed, something dangerous, because he knew that sooner or later he would have to reveal the truth. And when that happened, everything would come crashing down. But for now he was just Michael Smith, the clumsy waiter who was learning to balance plates and to understand the true meaning of working with dignity. Michael's first week as a waiter was a roller coaster of emotions and discoveries. Each shift revealed a new layer of the universe he thought he knew, but which was in fact completely alien when seen from the inside. He would wake up early, put on his simple uniform, and go to the restaurant with a mix of anxiety and determination. His hands no longer trembled as much when, carrying trays, his steps became steadier, and little by little he became part of the invisible machinery that made the village eatery run. But more than learning to serve tables and memorize menus, Michael was learning about people. Sarah, the pregnant cook, was 38 and expecting her third child. She worked on her feet for 8 hours straight, even with swollen legs and an aching back, because she needed the salary to support her family. Whenever Roger yelled at her, Sarah would lower her head and carry on, swallowing the humiliation as if it were part of the daily special. There was also young Kevin, a 22-year-old waiter, who was studying business administration at night and working during the day. He dreamed of managing his own business one day, but for now, he endured Roger's unfair reprimands because he needed to pay for college. There was Marlene, the cleaning lady who arrived at 5 in the morning and left at 3 in the afternoon, always with a tired smile on her face and a funny story about her grandchildren to share. And then there was Laura, our Laura. Every day Michael discovered something new about her. He discovered that she arrived half an hour before her shift to help Sarah organize the kitchen. He discovered that she saved part of her tips to buy medicine for her mother. He discovered that she had a habit of singing softly while cleaning the tables, always old classic soul songs that her mother used to play at home. He also discovered that behind that contagious joy, there was a deep sadness she hid very well. You could see it in her eyes when she thought no one was looking, a weariness that went far beyond the physical. It was a weariness of the soul of someone carrying the world on her shoulders and not letting anyone see the weight. On a rainy Tuesday, Michael was organizing the silverware when he heard a noise coming from the kitchen. It was almost 11 at night, and the restaurant had already closed. Everyone had gone home, or so he thought. Curious and a little concerned, he walked over and found a scene that surprised him. Laura was alone in the kitchen, her hair down and falling over her shoulders, wearing a personal apron over her regular clothes. On the counter in front of her were scattered ingredients: tomatoes, fresh basil, olive oil, cheese, pasta. She was focused, dicing the tomatoes with impressive precision, completely absorbed in her task. Michael stood at the door, unsure whether to interrupt or leave quietly. But before he could decide, Laura looked up and jumped slightly. "Wow, you scared me. I thought everyone had already left." "Sorry, I was just finishing up in the dining room and I heard a noise. Is everything okay? What are you doing here so late?" Laura hesitated as if deciding whether she could trust him. Then she sighed and motioned for him to come. "Closer. I'm practicing. There's a culinary competition in a few months and I want to enter. The prize is a good amount of money, enough to help my mum with her treatment. But I need to be prepared, you know. So I come here at night, after everyone's gone, and use the kitchen to practice. Roger doesn't know, obviously. If he found out, he'd probably fire me." Michael felt a surge of anger hearing that. She was here, using her own free time, risking her job, all to help her mother. And the manager, who should have been supporting and encouraging his employees, was an obstacle instead of an ally. "And what are you making today?" "A fresh tomato and basil sauce. It sounds simple, but it has to be perfect. The secret is in the balance between the sweetness of the tomato and the acidity, in getting the cooking time just right. My grandmother used to make it and I'm trying to recreate her recipe, but with a more modern twist." She went back to dicing the tomatoes, and Michael stood there, watching. There was something almost poetic in the way she handled the ingredients, as if she were speaking to them in a language only she understood. After a few minutes, Laura looked at him with a shy smile. "Want to help? I promise I won't make you eat it if it turns out bad." Michael laughed and grabbed an apron. "Sure, but I should warn you, my kitchen experience is practically zero. The best I can do is make instant ramen without burning it." Laura let out a hearty laugh and started giving him instructions. He chopped onions unevenly, nearly spilled olive oil on the floor, and confused oregano with thyme. She corrected everything with patience, laughing at his blunders and turning the moment into something light and fun. Slowly the sauce began to take shape, and the aroma filling the kitchen was mouth-watering. While they waited for the sauce to simmer on low heat, the two sat on the kitchen floor, leaning against a cabinet, sharing a bottle of water. Laura struck up a conversation, curious. "So, what's your story, Michael? Why are you working here?" Michael's heart pounded. He had a story prepared, of course, but lying to her was becoming increasingly difficult. "Oh, I've been a bit lost lately. I've worked a few different jobs but never really fit in anywhere. When I saw the opening here, I thought it could be a chance to start over, you know." Laura nodded, understanding. "I get it. Sometimes you need to start from scratch to figure out where you really want to be. I've changed jobs several times myself before landing here. Not that this place is perfect, far from it, but at least I have my colleagues, Sarah, the food, and now I have you too, the clumsiest waiter I've ever seen." She gave him a playful nudge, and Michael smiled. There was an intimacy growing between them, something that went beyond simple work camaraderie. It was as if they were building a silent connection made of small gestures, glances, and shared laughter. The sauce was ready, and Laura tasted it, closing her eyes to evaluate. Then she offered a spoon to Michael. He tried it and was blown away. It was delicious, balanced, with layers of flavor he didn't even know could exist in something so simple. "This is incredible, Laura. Seriously, if you make this at the competition, you'll definitely win." She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "I wish I could believe that, but there are so many talented people competing, and I'm just a restaurant server who cooks in her spare time. Who's going to take someone like me seriously?" Michael felt the urge to tell her the truth right then. He wanted to tell her he was the owner, that he could help her, that she didn't need to underestimate herself. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the fear of losing the genuine connection that was forming. Maybe it was the awareness that if she knew who he was, everything would change, so he just said, "I take you seriously. And if I do, other people will too. You just need to believe in yourself." They stayed there for a while longer, talking about recipes, childhood memories, and hidden dreams. Laura told him about her mother, Celia, a strong woman who had raised her daughter alone after her father left. She told him how her mother had always encouraged her love for cooking, even when they didn't have much money. She told him that now, seeing her mother sick and weak, she felt she needed to repay all the love and care she had received. "My mom always said that food made with love can heal any sadness, and I believe that. That's why I want to have my own restaurant one day. I want to create a place where people feel welcomed, where they can forget their problems for a few hours and just enjoy good food and good company." Michael listened to every word as if it were a revelation. The woman in front of him had more vision and heart than many of the business people he knew. She understood the essence of what a restaurant should be, something he himself had forgotten over the years. In the following days, the late-night meetings in the kitchen became a routine. Michael would make excuses to stay late, and Laura would always invite him to help. He learned basic techniques, tested recipes, made mistakes, and got things right. But more than learning to cook, he was learning about her, about the way she spoke of food with reverence, as if each dish were a story being told, about the way her face lit up when something turned out right, and how she laughed at her own failures without getting discouraged. And slowly, without realizing exactly when or how, Michael was falling in love. It was a dangerous and inconvenient feeling. He knew that, because the closer he got to her, the heavier the secret he carried became. He wasn't Michael Smith, the clumsy waiter. He was Michael Taylor, the owner of the restaurant chain, the man who had the power to change her life with the stroke of a pen. And she had no idea. But during the day, when they were in the dining room, reality would come crashing back. Roger continued to be a tyrant. He would yell at Sarah for any reason, humiliate Kevin in front of customers, and hand out false warnings like confetti. And Laura, whenever she could, would intervene. She defended her colleagues, absorbed some of the manager's anger, and acted as a shield between him and the most vulnerable. On one particularly tense Friday, Roger completely lost control. Sarah dropped a pan, and he exploded, screaming at her in the middle of the kitchen, calling her incompetent, saying he was thinking of firing her. Michael, who was nearby, saw Laura storm into the kitchen and place herself between the two. "That's enough, Roger. She dropped a pan. She didn't kill anyone. You don't need to scream like that." Roger turned to her, his face red with rage. "And who do you think you are to give me orders? You're just a server. Stay in your place before I fire you too." Laura didn't back down. "Then fire me. But I'm not going to stand here and watch you humiliate people like this. Sarah works harder than anyone here, and you know it." Roger took a threatening step forward, and Michael felt his blood boil. He was seconds away from revealing who he was and putting an end to it right there. But before he could do anything, Roger backed off, snorting like an angry bull. "You're lucky I'm in a good mood today. But this is going in your file. One more stunt like this, and you're out of here." He slammed the door on his way out, and Laura took a deep breath, trembling slightly. Sarah hugged her, crying softly, thanking her. Michael stood there, powerless, his hands clenched into fists, hating every second of this charade. He had the power to end it immediately, but he knew that if he revealed the truth at that moment, he would lose everything he had built with Laura. That night, when the two were in the kitchen again, Laura was quieter than usual. Michael noticed her eyes were teary, though she tried to hide it. "Are you okay?" Laura shrugged, distractedly stirring a bowl of flour. "I'm tired, Michael. Tired of fighting, of trying to protect everyone, of getting in trouble for doing the right thing. Sometimes I think it would be easier to just keep my head down and let things happen." "Don't say that. You're the only person here who has the courage to stand up to Roger. If it weren't for you, this place would be unbearable." She looked at him, and there was so much vulnerability in her gaze that Michael's heart ached. "But for what, Michael? Why do I wear myself out so much? To keep earning a pittance, being humiliated, watching my colleagues suffer? I wonder if it's worth it." Michael moved closer, and without thinking, took her hand. "It is. It's worth it. Because you're the difference between this place being just another restaurant and a place where people still believe they can be treated with dignity. You don't see it, but you're important. To Sarah, to Kevin, to Marlene, and to me too." Laura fell silent, looking at their intertwined hands. Then she smiled, a small, tired smile. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." They stayed like that for a few seconds, and Michael realized he was crossing a dangerous line. But he couldn't let go of her hand. He didn't want to. The preparations for the competition intensified. Laura tested different recipes each night: risottos, fresh pastas, delicate desserts. Michael became her official assistant, helping where he could and getting in the way when he couldn't avoid it. But more than helping, he was there for the company, for the stolen moments when they could just be themselves without hierarchies, without apparent lies, just two people who understood each other. On one of those nights, while waiting for a soufflé to rise in the oven, Laura commented, "You know, I feel like you're different from the other people who work here. I can't quite explain it. It's like you don't belong here, like you're bigger than all of this." A chill ran down Michael's spine. Was she starting to suspect? "What do you mean by that?" "Oh, I don't know. You have a way of speaking, of carrying yourself, that doesn't match someone working as a waiter. It seems like you've seen more, lived more, or maybe I'm just overthinking it." She laughed, but Michael knew it wasn't just her imagination. She was too smart and perceptive not to notice the small inconsistencies. He needed to be more careful, but at the same time, a part of him wanted her to find out. He wanted to be honest, to show who he really was. He wanted to be able to say that he had the power to transform that place, to get rid of Roger, to give her and her colleagues the work environment they deserved. But the fear of losing her was greater. If you were in Laura's shoes, would you have trusted someone who was hiding such a big secret? Let us know in the comments. The weeks flew by and the competition drew closer. Laura was getting more and more nervous, rehearsing the final dish she would present. A sweet potato gnocchi with a gorgonzola sauce and caramelized walnuts, served with an arugula salad with pear and honey. It was a bold combination, mixing rustic with sophisticated, just like her. Michael could see she was pinning all her hopes on that competition. It was as if it were her last chance to change her life, to give her mother the treatment she needed, to prove to herself that she was capable of more. The night before she was set to travel for the competition, Laura was particularly agitated. She checked her ingredients 3 times, tested the dish one more time, and remade the list of utensils she needed to bring. Michael stayed by her side the whole time, trying to calm her down. "Everything's going to be fine. Laura, you're amazing. You just need to believe it." She stopped what she was doing and looked at him, her eyes shining with emotion. "Thank you, Michael, for everything, for staying here with me all these nights, for helping me, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. I don't know what I would have done without you." Michael's chest tightened. "You would have managed on your own. You always do. But I'm glad I could be here." They looked at each other for a moment that seemed to stretch on forever. And right there in that instant, Michael knew with absolute certainty that he was lost. He had fallen in love with this woman in a way there was no coming back from. And the worst part was, she had no idea who he really was. The day of the competition dawned with a grey sky over New York, but for Laura, it was as if the sun was brighter than ever. She had woken up at 4 in the morning, mentally reviewed each step of the recipe, and laid out her ingredients with the care of someone handling precious jewels. Michael had offered to drive her to the event, but she declined, saying she needed to go alone, that it was important to make that journey on her own, like a rite of passage. He understood, but inside he was restless. He couldn't imagine being away on such an important day for her. So, without telling anyone, he decided to go to the competition discreetly. He put on casual clothes, a baseball cap and sunglasses, and blended into the crowd that was beginning to gather at the Javits Center, where the event was being held. The space was immense, with bleachers on one side and a row of professional cooking stations on the other, where the competitors would prepare their dishes. There were cameras everywhere, hosts rehearsing their lines, and judges conversing in serious tones. The atmosphere was thick with tension and anticipation, as if everyone there was about to witness something grand. Michael found a discreet spot in the bleachers, half hidden behind a group of culinary students who were excitedly discussing the competitors. From there, he had a perfect view of all the stations. He looked for Laura and found her at station number 7, wearing an impeccable white uniform, her hair in a neat bun, her hands arranging the ingredients with precision. Even from a distance, he could see her nervousness. He saw the way she took deep breaths, how she checked her ingredients repeatedly, how her hands trembled slightly as she handled the knives. He wanted to go down there and tell her everything would be okay, but he knew that would only make her more nervous. The host took the main stage and kicked off the event with an enthusiastic voice that echoed through the entire space. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 10th Annual New York Culinary Competition. Today, 24 talented amateur cooks will compete for the grand prize of $50,000 and a spot in a mentorship program with renowned chefs. Get ready for an afternoon of flavors, emotions, and incredible talent." The audience applauded enthusiastically, and Michael felt his own heart race. $50,000. It was exactly what Laura needed to start her mother's treatment. He prayed silently that she would win. The timer started, and the competitors began to work. The kitchen transformed into a frantic dance of synchronized movements, knives chopping ingredients, pans sizzling on the stove, ovens being opened and closed. Laura was focused, with a look of determination Michael had never seen before. She cut the sweet potatoes with surgical precision, prepared the sauce with fluid movements, and adjusted the seasoning with the confidence of someone who knows every note of the symphony she was creating. Michael barely blinked, completely absorbed in watching her. It was as if, in that moment, she was in her true element, free from the constraints of a server's uniform, free from Roger's humiliations, free to be exactly who she was always meant to be, and it was beautiful to watch. Time passed, and the tension mounted. Some competitors started making mistakes. One spilled sauce on their station, another burned a side dish. A young woman started crying from nerves, but Laura remained steady, focused, almost in a trance. She tasted the sauce, adjusted the salt, added a pinch of nutmeg. She plated the dish with artistic care, the gnocchi arranged in a semicircle, the sauce poured with precision, the salad positioned to create a visual contrast, the caramelized walnuts glistening like tiny golden jewels. When the timer hit 0 and the buzzer echoed through the space, she took a step back and looked at her plate. With a mixture of pride and anxiety. She had given it her all. Now it was up to the judges. The judges began to circulate among the stations, tasting each dish with impassive expressions that revealed nothing. When they reached Laura's station, Michael leaned forward as if that could help him see better. One of the judges, a famous chef named Renata Vance, tasted the gnocchi and closed her eyes for a moment. Then she made a few notes and spoke quietly with the other judges. Michael couldn't read her lips, but from her body language it seemed positive. After 2 hours of deliberation that felt like an eternity, the judges returned to the stage. The host took the envelope with the results and began to announce the finalists. 5 names were called, and with each one that wasn't Laura's, Michael's heart sank a little more, until finally, and our last finalist is Laura Nolan with her sweet potato gnocchi with gorgonzola and caramelized walnuts. Michael almost jumped to his feet to applaud, but restrained himself. Laura walked onto the stage with trembling legs but a wide smile on her face. She had done it. She was among the top 5. The final phase consisted of a Q&A with the judges, where they asked about the dish, the choice of ingredients, and the techniques used. Laura answered each question with a passion and sincerity that was touching. She talked about the grandmother who taught her to cook, the importance of blending tradition and innovation, and how for her, food was a form of love and care. Chef Renata asked the final question. Laura, what motivated you to enter this competition? Laura took a deep breath and her voice trembled slightly as she answered, My mother is sick and needs expensive treatment that I can't afford on my own. But more than the money, I wanted to prove to myself that I'm capable, that I can be more than what my circumstances tell me I am. This dish represents everything I've learned, everything I love, and everything I hope for the future. An emotional silence fell over the audience, and even some of the judges seemed moved. Michael felt his eyes sting and had to blink several times to keep the tears from falling. After another half hour of deliberation, the final result was announced. 3rd place went to a young chef from Chicago. 2nd place, with a prize of $25,000, went to Laura Nolan. She hadn't won 1st place, but she had won enough money to start her mother's treatment with a little left over to save. When her name was called, Laura covered her face with her hands and began to cry. She stumbled onto the stage, hugged the other competitors, and received her trophy and a ceremonial check. At the microphone, her voice choked with emotion. She thanked her mother, her co-workers who had always supported her, and a special person who had given her the courage not to give up, without mentioning any names. Michael knew she was talking about him, and in that moment he felt a mix of immense pride and crushing guilt. He had contributed, yes, but he was also deceiving this wonderful woman. And the more time passed, the harder it became to imagine the moment he would have to tell the truth. After the ceremony, Laura came down from the stage, surrounded by people congratulating her. Michael stayed where he was, watching from a distance, happy for her but lacking the courage to approach. It was better this way. She didn't know he was there and he would go home quietly. But fate had other plans. As Michael made his way down the bleachers, trying to go unnoticed, a man in a suit approached him with a wide smile. He was a reporter from a TV channel that covered food events. Michael Taylor, is that really you? What a surprise to see you here. Michael's blood ran cold. He tried to gesture for the man to lower his voice, but it was too late. A few people nearby started to look, to whisper. The reporter, oblivious to the discomfort he was causing, continued in a loud voice. "I didn't know you were interested in culinary competitions. Are you here scouting for talent for your restaurant chain?" "Oh, for those who don't know, this is Michael Taylor, owner of the famous Village Eatery chain, one of the biggest in New York." Michael's world collapsed. He saw, as if in slow motion, Laura turning toward the noise. He saw the exact moment she recognized him, even with the cap and sunglasses. He saw confusion wash over her face, then comprehension and finally pain. She approached slowly as if in a trance, pushing past people without apologizing. When she was close enough, she spoke in a low voice thick with emotion. "Michael Taylor, owner of the Village Eatery chain. You're the owner of the restaurant." He tried to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. Laura looked around, realizing people were watching, and pulled him by the arm to a more private corner of the lobby. There, away from prying eyes, she faced him with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Tell me it's not true. Tell me this is some kind of mistake." "Laura, I can explain." "Explain what, Michael?" "That you spent weeks pretending to be someone else. That you lied to me every single day. That you saw me vulnerable, crying, opening up to you, telling you my problems, and you were just standing there laughing at me." "I never laughed at you. Never. I went there because I wanted to understand why the restaurant was failing. I needed to see with my own eyes, to feel what the employees felt." "You're the owner, Michael. You always had the power to change everything, to get rid of Roger, to improve the working conditions, to do everything differently. But instead, you chose to play dress-up, to play at being poor, to play with people's feelings, with me. It wasn't a game, Laura. I learned more in those few weeks than in years of reading reports. I saw what was really wrong, and yes, I'm going to change everything, but I needed that time to understand." "And me? Was I part of your research? A guinea pig for your social experiment? You used me, Michael. You made me trust you, made me believe you were an honest person, someone who understood my struggle. And it was all a lie." "My feelings? For you weren't a lie, Laura. Everything I felt, everything that happened between us was real." Laura laughed, but it was a bitter, joyless laugh. "Real? How could it be real when even your name wasn't real? How can I trust anything you say now?" She took a step back, clutching the trophy to her chest as if it were a shield. "Please don't try to contact me. Don't show up at the restaurant. Don't send messages. Don't do anything. I need time to process all of this. And honestly, I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you." Before he could say anything more, Laura turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd still milling about the lobby. Michael stood there, paralyzed, feeling as if he'd been punched in the gut. He had lost her. At the moment she needed support the most, on the day she had achieved something so important, he had destroyed everything. He drove home in a daze, unable to think straight. Frank tried to call several times, but he didn't answer. He locked himself in his apartment and stared at the illuminated city below, feeling more alone than ever. The next day, when he arrived at the Village Eatery, he found out that Laura hadn't shown up for work. He called her cell, but it went straight to voicemail. He asked Sarah, but she said Laura had sent a message saying she was going to resign and was traveling to be with her mother for a while. Michael sat down at one of the empty restaurant tables and for the first time in a long time let the tears fall. He had gotten what he wanted, to understand what was wrong with his business, but in the process, he had lost the only thing that truly mattered. The following days were the hardest of his life. He tried to focus on work, but he couldn't. Everything reminded him of her, the kitchen where they had spent so many nights, the tables she served with a smile even when exhausted, the apron hanging in the locker room. It was then that Michael made a decision. If he couldn't take back the lie, he could at least do what he should have done from the beginning, take responsibility and change everything. He scheduled a meeting with all the employees of the Village Eatery, including Roger, who showed up with his usual arrogance. When everyone was gathered in the dining room, Michael stood on a chair so everyone could see him. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "I have a confession to make. You know me as Michael Smith, the waiter who was hired a few weeks ago. But that's not my real name. I am Michael Taylor, the owner of this restaurant chain." A shocked silence fell over the room. Sarah's eyes widened. Kevin dropped the cloth he was holding. Marlene brought a hand to her mouth. Roger turned visibly pale. I went undercover and came to work here because the numbers were falling, and I didn't understand why. Now I understand, and it's my fault. I was an absent owner who trusted the wrong people, who didn't care to know his employees, who allowed a toxic environment to take root. He looked directly at Roger. And you, Roger, are the personification of everything that is wrong here. I saw you humiliate employees, scream at people who work twice as hard as you, and create a climate of fear and disrespect. I have notes on every abuse I witnessed, every injustice you committed, and as of right now you are fired. Roger tried to protest, but Michael held up a hand. There's no discussion. Get your things and leave. Your final paycheck and severance will be available by the end of the week. His face red with anger and humiliation, Roger stomped out. As soon as the door closed, the entire room seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Michael continued. Starting today, a lot of things are going to change here. We're going to increase salaries, implement more humane schedules, and create a benefits and training program. We're going to hire a new manager who understands that leadership is about serving, not oppressing. And we're going to make this place what it always should have been, a dignified and respectful workplace. Sarah started to cry, and Marlene applauded. Little by little, everyone else joined in. Michael stepped down from the chair and was hugged by several employees. But in the midst of all that joy, he felt an immense emptiness, because the one person who should have been there to witness it was the very person he had lost. The days dragged on as if each hour lasted an eternity. Michael threw himself into renovating the village eatery, working from sunrise to sunset, as if the work could fill the void Laura had left. He hired a human resources consulting firm, implemented policies of respect and dignity in the workplace, raised salaries, and created benefit programs. The atmosphere was transforming, the employees were happier, and customers were returning. The numbers improved every week, but none of it really mattered, because every time he walked past the kitchen, he remembered the nights they spent there, laughing, cooking, sharing dreams. Every time he saw an empty table, he remembered her smile as she served customers. Laura's absence was a constant presence, a ghost that followed him into every corner of that place. Frank tried to cheer him up, saying he had done the right thing, that the changes were necessary, that the restaurant was being reborn. But Michael knew something fundamental was missing. He had saved the business, but he had lost its soul, and that soul had her name. 2 weeks after the revelation, Michael couldn't take it anymore. He had to see her, had to try to explain, even if she didn't want to listen. He asked Frank to get her address, and after some insistence, his assistant relented. It was a simple house in Astoria, Queens, a working-class neighborhood where the houses were small but well kept. Michael went there on a Saturday afternoon, wearing simple clothes, nothing flashy. He parked his car a few blocks away and walked to the address. The house was painted a light yellow, with a small garden out front and a low wooden fence. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he walked to the door. He rang the doorbell and waited. He heard footsteps on the other side, and when the door opened, there she was. Laura, with her hair down over her shoulders, wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, no makeup. She was even more beautiful than he remembered, despite the dark circles under her eyes that betrayed sleepless nights. When she saw him, the expression on her face went through several phases: surprise, anger, exhaustion, and finally, a sad resignation. "What are you doing here, Michael?" "I had to see you. I had to try to explain. I know you asked me not to come, but I can't move on without at least trying." Laura sighed and glanced back into the house. Then she looked at him again and nodded her head. "Come in, but only because I don't want the neighbors gossiping." He stepped inside and was led into a small living room. It had a worn but clean sofa, an old television, and a few photos on the wall showing a young Laura with a woman who must have been her mother. The space was modest, but it had a human warmth that Michael's luxurious apartments never had. "My mom's asleep, so keep your voice down," Laura said, crossing her arms. "You have 5 minutes." Michael swallowed hard. "Okay. I know I messed everything up, Laura. I know you have every right to hate me. But I need you to understand that I never wanted to hurt you." But you did, Michael. You made a fool of me. You made me believe you were an ordinary person, that you understood my struggle, that you were someone I could trust, and it was all a charade. It wasn't a charade, Laura. My feelings were never a charade. I went there with the intention of understanding what was wrong with the restaurant, that's true. But what happened between us wasn't part of the plan. I fell in love with you, for real, and it scared me because I knew I was lying about who I was. Laura shook her head, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Then why didn't you tell me the truth? You had so many chances. All those nights in the kitchen, all those conversations. You could have told me. I was afraid, Laura. Afraid you would treat me differently if you knew. Afraid of losing the connection we were building. I know it was selfish of me. I know it was wrong. But for the first time in my life, someone was seeing me for who I really am, not for what I have. And I didn't want to lose that. A tear rolled down Laura's cheek. But don't you get it, Michael? You took away my choice. I didn't get to decide if I wanted to trust you knowing who you really were. You decided for me, and that hurts more than the lie itself. Michael took a step forward but stopped when he saw her flinch. You're right, and I'm sorry. More than you can possibly imagine. But I came here to tell you what I did after you left. He began to tell her about the meeting with the employees, about revealing his identity, about firing Roger in front of everyone. He told her about the changes he implemented, the salary increases, the new work environment that was being built. Laura listened in silence, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said in a low voice, "You did what you should have done a long time ago. But you didn't do it because it was the right thing to do, you did it because you lost something you wanted. That's the difference." The accusation stung, but Michael knew there was some truth to it. Maybe that was true at first. But along the way, I learned things that go far beyond you and me. I learned that I was failing people who depended on me. I learned that money and reports say nothing about what really matters. I learned that the success of a business is measured by the happiness of the people who work there, not just by the profit. He took another step forward, and this time she didn't back away. And I learned that I fell in love with an incredible woman who has more courage, more kindness, and more talent than anyone I've ever met. A woman I don't deserve, but one I want a chance to earn one day. Laura closed her eyes, the tears now falling freely. Michael, I don't know if I can trust you again. You broke something inside me. You made me question my own judgment. You made me feel stupid. You're not stupid, Laura. You're the smartest person I know. And I was the idiot who didn't have the courage to be honest from the beginning. But I'm here now with no disguises, no lies, asking you for a chance to prove I can be better. I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I'm just asking you not to close the door completely. Laura opened her eyes and looked at him with an intensity that made his heart stop for a second. What do you want from me, Michael? I want a chance to start over. The right way this time. I want to get to know you for real, without lies. I want to show you who I am, when I'm not hiding behind a mask. And I want to get to know you too, all sides of you, the ones I've seen and the ones I haven't. But only if you want to. If you tell me to leave now, I'll respect that. I won't push, I won't show up again. The decision is yours. The silence that followed was the longest of Michael's life. Laura stood there, looking at him, and he could almost hear her thoughts, the internal conflict between her anger and the feelings that still lingered. Finally she spoke, her voice trembling. I need time, Michael. I can't just pretend nothing happened and go back as if everything is fine. You hurt me, and trust isn't rebuilt overnight. I understand. How much time do you need? I don't know. It could be weeks. It could be months. I need to clear my head, take care of my mom, process all of this. And I need to see if you've really changed, or if this is just another performance. Michael nodded, feeling a pang of pain, but also a sliver of relief. She wasn't closing the door completely. There was still hope. I'll wait. For as long as it takes. And I'll prove to you with actions and not words that I have changed, that I'm someone you can trust. A faint voice came from one of the bedrooms. Laura? Are you okay, honey? It was Celia. Laura quickly wiped her tears and called back. Everything's fine, Mum. I'll be right there. She looked at Michael. You need to go. He nodded and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned one last time. Laura, I just want you to know one thing. Everything I felt for you was real. The moments we spent together were the most real of my life, and I'll carry that with me always, no matter what happens. She didn't reply, but there was something in her eyes that gave him a thread of hope. Michael left with a heavy heart, but not a completely broken one. He had done all he could. Now it was a matter of waiting and hoping that time would heal the wounds he himself had caused. The following months were a period of transformation. Michael dedicated himself not only to the village eatery, but to the entire restaurant chain. He visited every location personally, talked to employees, listened to complaints, and implemented changes. He created direct communication channels, personal development programs, and clear policies against any form of abuse. The entire company began to change, to become more human. And as he worked, he thought of Laura every day. He didn't try to contact her, respecting her wishes, but through mutual acquaintances at the restaurant, he kept up with how she was doing. He heard that her mother's treatment was going well, that she had used part of her prize money to buy kitchen equipment and was giving private cooking classes, and that she was more relaxed and happy. 3 months after their last conversation, Michael was in his office when Frank walked in with a mysterious smile. There's someone here to see you at reception. Michael looked up from his papers. Who is it? I think you'd better see for yourself. Intrigued, Michael went down to the reception area and felt his heart nearly leap out of his chest when he saw her. Laura was standing there, wearing slacks and an elegant blouse, her hair in a bun, holding a document folder. She looked different, more confident, more mature. When their eyes met, she gave a small smile. Hi, Michael. Laura, I wasn't expecting to see you here. Is everything okay? She shook her head. Everything's fine. I just came because I thought it was time we talked, for real this time. He led her to his office and offered her coffee, which she accepted. They sat in comfortable armchairs, and for a few seconds they just looked at each other, not knowing where to begin. How are you? Michael asked, breaking the silence. I'm good. Better. My mom is responding well to treatment, and the cooking classes are going great. I've managed to save up some money, and I'm thinking about opening a small home-style cooking business. Nothing big, just something to start with. That's amazing, Laura. I knew you could do it. She smiled, a genuine smile. And you? I hear you've turned the whole chain upside down, that the employees are much happier, that the atmosphere has completely changed. I tried to do what was right. I learned a lot in those weeks working undercover. Mostly I learned that I had grown too distant from the people who make everything work. So yes, I changed a lot, and I'm still changing. Laura took a deep breath and opened the folder she had brought. She took out some papers and placed them on the table. I came here for 2 reasons. The first is this. Michael picked up the papers and saw it was a detailed business plan for a restaurant. It had a floor plan, a suggested menu, a cost analysis. Everything was meticulously prepared. It's my project, Laura explained. The restaurant I've always wanted to have. I spent the last few months developing this, thinking about every detail. And I wanted to show you because you were one of the people who inspired me not to give up on this dream. Michael read the plan with growing attention. It was brilliant, simple yet sophisticated, welcoming yet professional. Exactly the kind of place the city was missing. This is wonderful, Laura. You've really thought of everything, and I'd love to help in some way if you'll let me, not as a favor, but as an investor who believes in the project. Laura smiled. Actually, I came to propose a partnership. I have the vision and the culinary talent. You have the business experience and the resources. We could do this together, as partners, professionally and clearly. Michael's heart raced. She was offering him a new chance in a different way. I would love that, but only if you're sure you want to work with me after everything that happened. Laura's expression turned serious. I've spent the last few months thinking a lot about everything. About you, about me, about what happened. And I've come to understand a few things. You made a mistake, yes. The lie was wrong. But I also saw that you learned from your mistake. I saw that you really changed, not just on paper but in practice. And I realized that the feelings I had for you didn't just disappear because I was hurt. Michael held his breath, not knowing what to say. She continued, but I also learned that I need to trust my instincts and my own strength, that I don't need anyone to validate me or to make my dreams come true. I can do it alone if I have to, but I also learned that sometimes it's better to do things with company when it's the right company. So the second reason you came here is to give you an answer about us, about the possibility of starting over. The silence in the room was almost palpable. Michael waited, his heart beating so loudly he was sure she could hear it. I want to try, Michael, but differently. No rush, no pressure. Getting to know the real you and letting you get to know the real me. Building something solid based on honesty and respect. Do you think you can do that? Michael felt his eyes burn with emotion. I can, and I'll do everything right this time. No lies, no disguises. Just me as I am with all my flaws and qualities. Laura extended her hand. Then let's start over. Hi, my name is Laura Nolan. I'm 26. I love to cook. I'm extremely protective of the people I love, and I'm trying to make my dream of owning a restaurant come true. Michael shook her hand, smiling through tear-filled eyes. Hello, Laura. My name is Michael Taylor. I'm 32, I'm a businessman, but I'm still learning what that really means. I've made terrible mistakes, but I'm trying to be better every day, and I fell in love with the most incredible woman I've ever met. They stayed like that for a moment, hands clasped, looking at each other. And there, in that quiet office, they began again. For real this time. Without lies, without disguises, just two imperfect people trying to build something good together. In the following months, Laura returned to work at the village eatery, but now in a completely different role. She was no longer just a server. She was a customer experience consultant, responsible for training the staff, developing new dishes, and ensuring the work environment remained healthy. And in parallel, she worked with Michael on the project for her own restaurant. They spent hours together, planning, discussing, sometimes disagreeing, but always with respect. They learned from each other. Michael learned about passion, about putting heart into his work, about the importance of caring for people. Laura learned about management, about how to turn dreams into reality, about how to lead with firmness without losing her humanity. And slowly, very slowly, they grew closer, not just as business partners, but as companions. Dinners that began as work meetings ended with deep conversations about life. Messages about suppliers turned into good morning and good night. Casual encounters at the restaurant became long walks through the city. 6 months. Later, Laura's small restaurant opened. She insisted on naming it Celia's Place in honor of her mother, who was doing much better and was there at the grand opening, proud and emotional. It was a small place with only 15 tables, simple but cozy decor, and a menu that combined traditional recipes with modern twists. Michael was there, not as a controlling partner, but as a supportive one. He watched Laura command the space with a natural grace, treating every customer like a family friend, every dish like a declaration of love. At the end of the night, when the last customer had left and Laura was packing up, Michael helped her clear the tables. They worked in a comfortable silence side by side, just as they had done so many times in the kitchen of the village eatery. "You did it," Michael said softly. "You made your dream come true." Laura smiled, tired but happy. "We did it, because I wouldn't have gotten here without you, without what you taught me, without the support you gave me. Even with everything that happened at the beginning, in the end, you were an important part of this journey." Michael moved closer, and for the first time since the revelation, gently touched her face. "And you were an important part of my journey, too. You taught me how to be human again. You showed me that success without a soul isn't success. It's just an empty shell." Laura placed her hand over his. "We both learned a lot, didn't we?" Michael nodded and leaned in slowly. When their lips met, it was as if all the hurt, all the fears, all the doubts dissolved. It was a kiss of new beginnings, of promise, of two hearts finally allowing themselves to trust again. When they pulled apart, Laura whispered, "No more lies." Michael smiled. "No more lies. Only the truth from now on." And there, in the small restaurant that represented Laura's dreams and Michael's redemption, two souls finally found their place. A place built on honesty, respect, and a love that survived the storms because deep down it had always been true. The village eatery continued to thrive, now as a model of how a business should treat its employees. And Celia's place became one of the most beloved spots in the neighborhood, always busy, always welcoming, always full of stories of love and new beginnings. Because in the end, this story was never just about a businessman in disguise or a server with big dreams. It was about two imperfect people who found in each other the courage to be better. It was about learning that true love doesn't work with masks, that trust is built with transparency, and that sometimes you have to lose everything to understand what truly matters. And they lived, not a perfect fairy tale ending, but something much more valuable, a real life with its challenges and joys, built on a solid foundation of truth, respect, and a love they chose to cultivate every day, one decision at a time. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Michael and Laura has touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of mistakes, forgiveness, and new beginnings, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what stood out to you most in this story. Was it Laura's courage in defending her colleagues? Was it Michael's transformation as he understood his mistakes? Or was it the hopeful new beginning they built together? Every day we bring you intense stories like this one, revealing the deepest side of the human soul, the struggles we face and the strength we find to start over. We'll see you in the next episode with another story that will stir your emotions.